Have you ever reached a point where the life you worked so hard to build no longer feels like it fits, but yet you can't quite see what's next? That's the in-between space, where the old identity is dissolving and the new one hasn't yet fully formed. It can feel unsettling, lonely, and confusing. But what if that space isn't something to rush through or fix? What if it's actually a sacred threshold? Today, we're talking about the liminal space, that powerful in-between where deep identity shifts happen, intuition gets louder, and true self-mastery begins. I'm joined by Michelle Boyde, a registered master hypnotist, who has worked with over 1,000 people navigating that exact transition, especially for women who've left behind traditional definitions of success and are ready to build something aligned, sustainable, and deeply their own. In this conversation, we explore the signs that you're in the liminal space, why leaving security is often part of the becoming who you are meant to be, and how subconscious patterns can either keep you stuck or help you step forward with clarity and trust. If you've been feeling unmoored, called forward, or quietly restless for more, this episode is for you. Have you ever noticed your skin reflects your stress? I used to struggle with mine, dry, dull, reactive, until I started pairing nervous system regulation with products that actually honor your body. That's why I love Milk and Butterflies. They handcraft every formula with 100% organic ingredients and powerful aromatherapy oils. They aren't just products for your skin, they're rituals that restore hydration, resilience, and calm even in the busiest seasons of our life. You can try them for yourself and feel the difference. Head to Milk and Butterflies and use my promo code Dr. Kelly for free shipping. That's DRKELLY for free shipping. Also, check out the link in the description for the podcast. All right, welcome back to another episode of Rewiring Health. I'm so honored to have Michelle Boyde on the podcast today. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to this chat.
Me too. I know we're just chatting for a little while and I just love what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the liminal space and everything that goes along with it. So I'm fascinated by this and I'm sure it's going to resonate with so many people. But before we get into it, do you mind just sharing your story? What brought you into this space and helping people navigate that?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, 7 years ago, I was a brand and culture strategist. So I was a consultant and I hit this point where I was just, I don't want to do this anymore. You know, I was on the surface, very successful. All the boxes were getting ticked, but there was this part of me that I just knew it wasn't the work I wanted to do for the long term and that I wasn't day to day having as much impact as I wanted to have. So, you know, when I finally got my permanent residency, because I was living in Australia at the time, I'm English by birth, you can probably hear. And I got my permanent residency and I walked away from that career. I kind of had my freedom fund, which I'd saved up. And I literally went out into the world to just see what was next. And I ended up training initially as a meditation teacher because I'd had such profound experiences with meditation. And then I decided that I wanted to train as a master coach. And when I found that particular qualification, I stumbled into training as a hypnotist. I didn't plan it. And it was one of those classic things where, you know, you do it and you just go, oh, this is the thing that I am meant to be doing. And then, you know, that work has evolved where I'm always working with people in these in-between states from when they're not who they were and they're obviously not yet who they're fully becoming. So, you know, that's sort of very quickly my story. And I definitely would say that I've gone through lots of liminal spaces myself, both with that very big, you know, career transition. I did a big move from the UK to Australia. And then actually, as we were chatting just before we hit record back in March, I actually packed up life in Australia. So I'm now in Montenegro. So yeah, very fond of liminal spaces.
Yeah, so you've definitely had the experience, and I think it's so profound what you shared. Like, it's like almost like hypnotism found you, and I think that's happened so many times. But you go down these paths, and it just becomes like the next stepping stone to what feels aligned with us. So I absolutely love that. I'd love to go more into like that journey of when you left that corporate life, and as you kind of progressed and started seeking out opportunities and what really felt aligned with you, what did that feel like? Because it can be really challenging to leave what you know, that sense of security, that sense of purpose, that sense of who you think you are, to step into the unknown. Can you dive into that a little bit more? What did that feel
Oh,
like?
I mean, it definitely is. And we don't realize, I think, how much we do this. You meet somebody new, and one of the first things they say is, "Oh, what do you do?"
Mhm.
And, I used to have this thing where I'd say I was a consultant. I would describe what I did. I used to work with C-suite, and, people would go, "Oh," and you get that response. And then when you actually turn around and go, "Well, I've just quit my career. I actually have no idea what I'm going to do next." So they go, "Well, what are you doing right now?" "Oh, well, I'm just, spending some time reflecting and kind of regulating my nervous system and seeing what path I find myself on." People go, "Oh, okay." And then, they kind of look at you a bit. They often say, "Oh, you're quite brave and courageous," but they don't know what to say from there on. And it's because you are switching your identity and you're letting go of something that you've worked for so much of your life and you've just naturally associated yourself with. So it's very exciting, because you start to think about all the new possibilities, but there is a lot of stuff that happens in that transition period, and there's certainly things that I can talk to, that if anybody's listening and they are in that in between, that you're feeling a lot of stuff. So there's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of fear, there's lots of stuff mixed in together. I call it quite an electric terrain, for that very reason.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure when you get that reaction too of like, oh, like that can throw you off, I imagine too, that you have maybe some of the self-doubt creeping in of like, what am I doing? Like, how did you anchor into like, no, this is right for me, even if you were getting some of those external stimuli of doubting your decisions?
Well, one thing I would say is that I've always had a very strong sense of intuition and self-trust. And so I've cultivated that. I trust that. And so I know that I am my authority more than anybody else. And I've always had that. But what I also found was I had to be really mindful of the conversations I found myself in. Like, there was one particular instance. I remember sitting in this bar in Sydney in this area called Barangaroo with a very, very close friend. And she had just stepped up into this next level of career, because when I left, I was, 34 when I left 7 years ago. And so all my friends, everybody was going up another quite significant jump in leadership, in salary. It was like everybody got those roles in about 6 months after I quit. And so then you're sitting there having these conversations and your friends are telling you. And of course, there is that old part of your identity that's going, should you have stayed? Should you have done that? Look where you could be now. You could be earning that salary. You could have that title. And in those moments, you really have to anchor into, but that's not my definition of success going forward. I trust myself. I know there's something else. And even if I don't have full clarity yet, I know that I'm my best authority and guidance on it. And put yourself around people who are looking at things differently, because it reinforces the choices that you're making.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you already mentioned is that courage to anchor into yourself. I mean, it takes so much courage to not go along with the norms and what everybody's doing, even when you see they're being successful, but to like, no, my path is going to look different and that's okay. I absolutely love that. I love for you to share, what is the liminal space for someone who's never heard that term before. Can you just describe what is the liminal space?
Yeah, so liminal spaces are in between spaces, and we get them throughout life. So you've got very physical liminal spaces, like an airport is a liminal space when you're between destinations. Corridors are between places, and then you have biological liminal spaces like perimenopause. Is one of those, for argument's sake. But then we have this liminal space that sits between our identities, and it's when you are not who you were. You've shed quite a lot of that old identity, but you haven't yet mastered the new identity. So it's this weird in between, and it can feel really awkward and uncomfortable. I talk about it being this electric terrain because it can be really exciting in one breath, but in the next breath, there's so much self-judgment, and you'll feel you're like a limbo. You're between versions of yourself, and you're not anchored in either of those places. So that is the liminal space. And of course, when you collapse that space, that's when you fully master this next identity of yourself. And I think the important thing to say here is these liminal spaces are not that kind of gradual growth, because we're always growing and evolving to an extent. It's not those. They're almost these quantum leap phases where when you've landed the new identity, you kind of look back and you're like, I don't even recognize her anymore. Like she really is an old version of me that I've put to bed. So that is the liminal space, and it can be very exciting, but it also has a lot of uncertainty in it as well.
I want to take a brief moment to pause from the episode to share something that I've noticed so many women struggle with, and maybe this resonates with you, that you do not feel safe to honor your own needs. You might be the one who learned how to be easy, capable, and reliable, and yet you're tired of overriding yourself. You're tired of explaining your no, you're tired of feeling guilty for wanting space, and tired of shrinking your truth to keep the peace. The thing that most people don't realize is that you can't actually protect your peace without a sense of inner safety. And without that safety, boundaries feel harsh, guilt feels unavoidable, and self-respect feels like something you're constantly working at instead of resting into. If you have that quiet, steady craving for self-respect, the kind that lives in your body, Self-Respect Reset was created for you. It's a guided, body-based experience designed to help you rebuild inner safety, trust yourself again, and honor your needs without guilt, explanation, or self-abandonment. If this speaks to you, you can find the link to join in the show notes. Now back to the episode.
Mm-hmm. And so when you're in that like messy middle, maybe that liminal space of like releasing some of the past versions of yourself, but stepping into the middle, I mean, I've experienced this in my life. There's like loss of relationships. There's like job shifts, money changes. I mean, there's some big things that you experience, and it can be so jarring. There's a lot of grief in that. Can you talk about a little more about like what's the experience of that? Like when you are going through those and you're like trusting that there's going to be something on the other side, but you're just in the middle watching your whole life kind of dissolve at its core.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the thing is that whatever life you're living is always associated with an identity. And the people don't realize that. So as you say, the relationships, the jobs, the body you have, the way you move in the world, sometimes the clothes you wear, the haircut, the bank account, like everything is tied into an identity. And so, very often people are striving, they're seeking an achievement. And the reason they can't get to it is because it belongs to an identity they haven't yet mastered. But that means is that when you're leaving one identity behind, you're naturally going to be leaving stuff behind. And you have to let go, because if you don't let go, there isn't space for the new stuff. But there is 5 things that I always see with people when they're deep in that liminal space. Mm-hmm. So one of them is that the inner critic starts absolutely screaming. So it's like all of that self-doubt comes up. The inner dialogue is very much, can I do this? Am I cut out for this? Am I even on the right path? Am I making the right decisions? Oh my God, I'm not good enough. It's like that real inner critic comes flooding up. What you also see is it's like a total emotional roller coaster. Mm-hmm. So, someone who's usually quite regulated and calm and grounded, it's like, in the morning, you're like, I've got this. This is so exciting. I can do this. And an hour later, head in your hands, drinking a cup of tea, wanting to have a good cry. Like there's so much of that happening. You're knackered. I think this is the bit that people don't expect, is that you are so much more tired than you are in either of these 2 identities, because you're actually holding the old identity, you're trying to hold the new identity, and what's happening in your body and your subconscious trying to upgrade is, requires so much energy. So it's really, really tiring. And it's not the tiredness of like, oh, I've just done a really full day's worth of work and looked after my kids, or, whatever your life is set up as. It's like this tiredness that you can't get away from. And the other thing you'll notice is that you often start questioning your desires. It's like, do I really want this? And, you see this, people will perhaps leave a job or leave a relationship and or want to change their business and take it in another direction. And they were like, I know this is what I want. And then there's this part in the liminal where they start going, is it what I want? I'm not sure. It's like the clarity around desire starts to fall away. And then the 5th thing that you'll notice, if there's any relation to career or business in your liminal transition, is that all your money shit comes up. Like it comes up screaming. And I think this can also be really interesting for people who have always earned well and didn't really think they had any money problems at all. But what happens is this whole new identity and the new capacity and expansion that's, you know, associated with that always plays into money if it's to do with career and business. And there is always this part of you that's wanting to hold you in that safe space. So all of your questions around your worth, your value, what you can actually generate for yourself comes flooding up, even if you're not used to experiencing that, even if you are someone who's actually created wealth very easily in the past. So they're 5 things that you will experience. It's like inner critic, emotional roller coaster, absolutely tired all the time, not sure if you know what you want, and then money if it's career and business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can definitely testify all 5 of those in my transitions of anything in life. But yeah, I mean, spot on with that. And what is the purpose of all that? Like, why do we experience so much turmoil in that messy middle, like, or that liminal space? Like, what is that preparing us for the expansion of the new version of ourselves?
Yeah, it is. And one thing you'll never hear me say, I never say unlock your new identity. I always say master your new identity, because actually that's what the liminal is asking. It's like, if you want this new identity, you've got to master me. You've got to master all of the parts. And this is where people come unstuck. You know, people will do a lot of personal development. They'll do lots of therapy, lots of coaching, lots of, you know, and there's lots of fantastic modalities out there, and they do lots of stuff. But mastery is all about depth. You know, someone who is a master of something has real excellence in that area. And when we kind of stay up here, we don't have the depth. So the mastery is about all the stuff that you know, you understand. It's like really bringing it deeply down through the whole of your being, your body, your energy field, everything, so that you truly master it. And so it can very often be stuff that you feel that you've gone around loads of times. You know, it's like, oh, I've been working on my self-worth for a decade, you know, or I've been working on this aspect of it. But actually, it's just that you haven't taken it deep enough. And it's the mastery. So it's like, you can't have the new identity until you master all that stuff. And when you master it, then you step into this whole new level of capacity. And you know, this is one of the things why it can feel so very overwhelming, especially, you know, when you're coming up to almost mastering that identity, when a lot of people feel totally overwhelmed. Because if you imagine there's so much stuff coming into your world, and that can be, you know, that could be money, that could be abundance, that could be clients, that could be relationships, whatever, it's flowing in like water. And, you know, you've got a couple of jugs in your old identity to catch that water, and they're not big enough anymore. So it's like it's flowing out everywhere, and you start to feel like you're drowning. And of course, once you actually master that new identity, it's like you've got more jugs, or you've got bigger buckets, and then you're able to capture all of that stuff, whether that's results, achievements, different ways that you feel, without this feeling that it's all escaping you and that you're drowning in amongst it. So it's about mastery, and it's about depth.
Yeah, I really like that visual, because it really just puts it into like something that's tangible. Like, oh yeah, that no wonder I feel the way I do when I'm trying to manage all this without the resources to do it all. And when you're in that middle space, like, it can feel like it's never going to end. Are there signs that you're starting to master yourself or master the new identity? What are some signs that you can look for of like, okay, I'm working my way towards that?
Yeah, so there's things that you'll notice. And this is what's really actually interesting, is because, you know, people will come and work with me, and it's usually because there is an achievement that I want. There is a kind of quite tangible material goal, or quite a big milestone. You know, that could be a business milestone, it could be a relationship milestone, but it's something quite tangible. But there's lots of other stuff that happens just before that really drops in. And so one of them is actually all to do with your body. So there will be changes in your body. So very often clients will come in, and when they initially say, I want to work with you, they don't mention something that's wrong in their body. But as soon as I ask the question, there is always something in the physical body that is not quite right. You know, whether it's pains, it's aches, problems with the stomach, etc. But I've just finished with a client, and she came into my world. It was all to do with the direction of her business. She knew she was due a new identity there, a whole new era. But she also came in with a rash and backache. So as soon as we collapsed the liminal, the rash disappeared, the backache disappeared. So one of the things you will probably notice, and if you're listening, reflecting to this now, is if you're in that liminal space, it's probably things with your body that don't feel quite right. And you might have put them down to other things. But if there's something in your body, remember the body and the subconscious, it's, parts of your body are conscious, but your subconscious, all of the subconscious is in your body and in your energy field. It's because it's dragging its heels and it doesn't want to go towards that new identity. So stuff will pop up. So as you start to get towards really mastering that new identity, you'll notice stuff changes in your body. You might even notice your skin gets brighter. If you've got something like a rash, or perhaps you've got problems with your digestion or aches and pains, those start to disappear. So that's one of the signs that you are almost there. Another sign is that emotional roller coaster begins to regulate. You just suddenly start to feel that, it's not the massive waves. It's just all feels a little bit more grounded. What happens next is you'll start to feel that energy come back. So you're not as tired. You feel like your capacity has increased, even though what you're doing hasn't actually been reduced as such. And then what comes from that is the clarity starts to return. So you stop second guessing yourself, and you go back into that phase of like, actually, I do know that I'm on the right course, and I know this is correct. And then shortly after that is when those really sort of, other tangible external world results start to pop. So, your body and your emotions and your tiredness are a really good indicator that you're coming to the end of that liminal passage and initiation, really.
And then everything you described sounds so desirable. So if you're in that liminal space, how do we get to those results and that feeling in life quicker? Like, how do we collapse that time?
Yeah. So as I say, it's about mastery. And one of the ways that if you want to quickly diagnose yourself with some of the stuff as you're listening to this, we can talk about the difference between what you think and what you believe. So being a hypnotist, I'm quite anal about language. And even though we interchange those two words, they do mean different stuff. So, a thought is situational and a belief is not. And what I mean by that is what you think is going to change depending on the situation that you're in. But a belief, because a belief is so deep inside you, you've mastered it, it doesn't change. So if we make this tangible, and I don't like this expression of like, 6-figure business, 7-figure business, but we all know what a 6-figure business is. So it's really tangible. So if, for example, you can sit in a room with 6-figure business owners and you are able to say, I am successful, and you have the experience of I am successful. However, we pick you up and we sit you in a room with, say, 7-figure business owners. And in that room, you aren't saying to yourself, I'm successful. You don't have that experience. Then what that tells you is that I'm successful is something that you think, and it's not something that you believe. Because if you truly believe you're successful, it doesn't matter where I put you, because you embody the feeling of I am successful. And this is one of the things you'll notice is that when you're in that liminal space, the natural reaction is to seek more. So people tend to listen to more podcasts, read more books, take more courses. It's like, because most of these people are high-performing people and they want to sort the problem out. So they go out to sort the problem. But it's just more stuff. And actually, you don't need to think more. You don't need to know more. You don't need more knowledge and concepts and abstract thinking. You just need to master the stuff that you thought you'd mastered, but actually you haven't landed it at that depth. So that's a really good way for you to identify what changes for me, depending on who I'm with, where I'm with, what I'm doing. That's a good indicator of where the mastery is missing, actually.
And then to go into that depth, is it practice, or is it just recognizing like the work you've done and then how you can revisit that? Can you describe the depth a little bit more? How do you go deeper in yourself?
Well, it is actually moving it through the body, and it's making sure that that thought actually works as a belief throughout the body. So like, for example, there's different stages of, like, we think of a continuum of consciousness and subconsciousness, for example. So consciousness on this end of the scale, it's what's happening in our heads. It's our conscious mind, right? And if I was to say to you, Kelly, tell me what you're thinking, what's in your awareness right now, you would very easily, if you wanted to, tell me what you're thinking. Everybody has great awareness there.
Yeah. Then
we start to move into the space where it's partly conscious and it's partly subconscious. And this is parts of your body. So for example, if I say, can you place your awareness on your left hand? Most people can place their awareness on the left hand. And, you might be able to tell me what you feel, the temperature of the air, any sensation, etc. That's also quite conscious for most people. But then we start to go into, if there's something in the hand that's perhaps is holding you back, you might not be able to tap into that. That's where it starts to get subconscious. And then we move down into other parts of the body. For example, if I say to you, can you place your awareness on your gallbladder, for argument's sake? Most people would be like, oh, I can't tap into that. It's completely subconscious. You know, this is what I mean. The subconscious is always in the body. Yeah. And then you've got the final level, which is actually what's happening in your energy field, which again, for most people is completely subconscious. So it's actually moving from this completely conscious state down into what is happening in my body, what is happening in my energy field, and tweaking in those places, which is why the hypnotic work is so powerful.
Amazing. I love it. Thank you so much for the explanation too, because I think that just really brings that clarity of like, you know, you talk about the thinking, the podcast, the books, and it's like how surfacey that is, and to realize like how much it needs to go deeper. And it's what you describe of doing more and learning more is the trap that so many of us get caught in. I know I have done that many times of just like, okay, I must not know enough. I have to go and find more information. But that's really just kind of a dead end when we talk about moving forward in our life. So I appreciate that explanation. Super helpful for bringing clarity to it. And one thing I want to go into that is, how do we recognize our potential? So if someone is in a space in their life, they're really miserable, they don't want to live like that anymore, they're maybe in a corporation that's not treating them well, they feel empty, how do they recognize like, oh, I have more in me, I'm not living in alignment? How can I recognize to make that shift and start the process of moving forward?
Yeah, and you know, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because purpose, it feels often like this big thing of what is my purpose and how do I identify it? And what I would encourage people is, if you feel that you're not getting into action because I don't know my purpose yet, just be aware, and this, you might not like to hear this, but it's like an ultimate self-sabotage technique. It's like, I can't change because I don't yet know my purpose. And what I always say is like, actually, let's put purpose aside. So I recognize that you want to do more purposeful work, more meaningful work. Totally get that. I think everybody who's listening to this podcast and most people who've sorted out all the basic stuff in their life feel that way. But just put purpose down for a minute. And then what I say is that focus on your potential, because your potential is your gateway to your purpose. And the reason for that is, if you subscribe to this idea that you have been put on this earth with a purpose, then you also must subscribe to the idea that you've been given the potential to execute on the purpose. So we don't even need to worry about the purpose. Let's focus in on your potential, because as you experience and explore more of your potential, a little bit more here and there, you're naturally going to end up on purpose. And then the question comes, okay, so how do I start to really identify my potential? And this is where people get stuck. You'll hear people thinking, okay, so this is my experience, this is my capability, these are my qualifications, etc. And that's all good. But that's the framing of the world you've been in and the identity that you've been in. So if we want something different, we need something else. And, you know, there are other ways we can do that with human design, with the gene keys, which I also work with. But actually, the one thing that always leads into potential is desire. So in the same way that we don't have to worry about purpose, we just focus in on potential. How do we get to potential? We focus in on desire. Because again, you've got to subscribe to the idea that if somebody or something wants you to be doing something, it's got to be somewhat pleasurable. So notice what you desire, notice what you enjoy. You know, what is the desire that really sits on your heart? Because that is an indicator of a part of your potential that you need to go and explore. You need to go play with, you need to go see what sits, you know, in that part. And it can be little whispers. Like when I left that career, I didn't know I wanted to be a hypnotist. I didn't know I wanted to do this work, but I had a very strong sense that I wanted to do something where I could be with somebody for a short period of time and see something change. Because what I used to do was write these big decks and strategies, and then they wouldn't get implemented properly. And then you're like, well, this was just an exercise in lots of people doing stuff that made them feel smart, but not really changing anything. So I like, one desire that was on my heart was there's got to be something where my involvement is very quick to an outcome. So, you know, that's what I was open to. You know, I was so interested in meditation because of the impact, but didn't end up being meditation was what I did. But of course, it has fed into my work in some way. So it's just following those desires. And this is again where I, kind of leads into this intuitive piece, is where people get themselves really stuck with intuition. Is I always say people want to treat it like it's Google Maps. So, Google Maps is like, there's a destination, then this is the route you're going to take, and literally this is every step you're going to take. Intuition doesn't work that way. It literally just tells you the next correct thing. So that next correct thing might even be go along to that seminar, or go get a coffee this morning, or whatever it is. It's little nudges. And as you follow the nudges, it's like you get on the path. So you can't wait for this big aha of clarity, because it's just not how intuition works.
Yeah, so helpful. And I love that. That's been my experience too, of like, I had no idea where I was going, but it was just saying yes to the next thing. And then you're like, oh my gosh, that's really cool. And then it opened up another door. And what does that feel like? I just love to hear your description. Like with intuition, if it's a yes, what does that feel like in the body versus like a no in your body?
So, I think it can be a little bit different for everyone. And I think what's interesting, and this is also what I say about intuition, is, I'm going on a tangent, but I'm going to come back, is that, we have the kind of the five senses of the present moment, what we can see, hear, taste, smell, feel, right? And all they do is give us current information about the present moment. We interpret it and make it mean things about the future and the past, but actually the sensory information is of now. And then a lot of people will talk about, and then there's a sixth sense. To me, it's not a sixth sense. It's actually, and if you're listening to this on an audio, you can't see what I'm doing with my hands, but you've literally got one level, which is your five senses. And then below that, you've got another level, which are all of the intuitive senses. So, that's where you've got, clairaudience and clairvoyance and clairolfactory and, claircognizance and sentience and all of the different clairs, which are different intuitions. And I think this is the thing. It's a little bit different for different people. And for me, I have two of those. My intuition comes through two of those very strongly. So one of them is I have clairsentience, so I feel. And I also think what's interesting here is, and I'm, with human design, if anybody's familiar with human design, you have these things called your authority, which is how you decide what's correct for you. 51% of the population have a defined solar plexus, which is the emotional feeling authority. I have that. And also, if you look into what are the clairs that most people have, clairsentience is the biggest one. And so I've always wondered if there is a connection between the two. But I'm clairsentient, so I feel. I get a real sense of feeling. And the other one is I get claircognizance. So I will literally get these moments where something just drops in and I know it. I can't tell you why, I just know it. And how I also know that it's intuition as opposed to my head is because, one, I haven't even been thinking about the thing. It's like it comes in completely from left field. And often it doesn't make sense. Like if you say it to someone else, they'd be like, huh? So a really good example of this, when I decided to leave Australia, I had been restless. I was restless. I knew something was coming and my body was talking to me in so many ways. But I was sitting in this beautiful tea ceremony. There is this beautiful tea place in Byron Bay called Cloud Hidden. And I was there at sunrise, and you go in and they pour you several cups of tea, and it's just you sit in silence and you drink the tea, and it's kind of meditative. It's a beautiful way to start the day. And I was there with a friend, and I'd been sitting for like 30 minutes just quietly. And literally all of a sudden, I had this wave of energy that came up from my root. It flushed all the way up through my body. And then I just had this, your time here is complete. It's time to go. And it was just like goosebumps.
I just got goosebumps as you said it.
As I say it again. And it was, I walked out of there and I sat with my friend. And she's very intuitive as well. She knew something had shifted. And I was like, it's time to pack up life here. Like, it's the clearest message. And when you get those messages, it's like, there's nothing to think about. You just know. You have to act on it. So I didn't know where I was going, and I still don't have a permanent base. I mean, I'm very lucky that my business allows me to go wherever. So I'm currently in Montenegro, great location. But I didn't know the next step. But the nudge, this is my point. The nudge was, okay, this is complete. Time to leave. So I think it feels a bit different for everyone. So, I don't hear stuff, but I get this knowing, and I get this feeling.
Yeah. So just tuning into your own self, knowing yourself well enough to start seeing the patterns of what might be right for you. Yeah, really. And I appreciate your example too, because that's really like, I love hearing, because I think it's like when you hear that, like, okay, that's something maybe someone who's listening has experienced something similar to them, but like, oh, that was my intuition. Because we can often overlook those quiet whispers that are going on within us, get lost in the noise of the world.
And this is why, if you're looking for your next thing, is that those five senses of now, they're only giving you information about the moment that you're in now. And it's the intuitive senses that open up these other timelines, these other dimensions, these other possibilities. So, you can work it out from the present moment, but you're missing so much more wisdom that's available to you if you open up into these intuitive aspects. And if there was one tip that I would give your listeners, it's cut out noise. Our lives are so noisy. If for 1 week you stop putting the TV on, you stop listening to podcasts, you stop listening to music, you stop asking other people, and in fact, you just cut out as much input of any sort that you can manage, just notice what happens in a week. Because when you turn the noise out, then you'll start to notice other stuff.
And then there's no shortage of noise in this, especially in a society. We have a phone in front of us all the time, screens in front of us. It's like, when is there quiet time? When you sit and think about it, I used to think about how much quiet time do I actually get? And it was very, very little until I was intentional about it. And then, you don't realize how much stimulus is constantly around you, because we can kind of shut it out, but we're really not able to tune into ourselves. And so interesting you talk about the senses. Dr. Tara Stewart talks about there's 34 senses she has found so far, and I guess there's more too. They just found you can be magnetic and find the true north within your body. So it's so fascinating, what we've been taught, just the five senses. It's being open to realizing there's so much more power within us than we actually are aware of. So fascinating. One thing I'd love to get into, because I find this is something that can be really challenging, especially I run my own business, and it can be really hard of being I have to do all the things. You're holding it all down. But you talk about having an energetically sustainable business. Can you talk about what that looks like, and how do we cultivate that for ourselves?
Yeah. So energetically sustainable success. So, where this fits in with the whole liminal thing is that, you can master this new version, but if you want to also stay there and hold it and continue to expand, you have to manage your energy. And the thing about energy is that we don't all have the same energy. And, if you want any kind of proof of this, you only have to look at the people you have in your life. And I don't know which one of these I'm describing, which is you, but, we have some friends who are like Duracell bunnies. And it's they get up in the morning and, they're off to Pilates, and they go here and they do this and they do that and they do that and they go all day. You go on holiday with them and they don't ever want to sit. Okay, so that's you. So you're
that's me. Yes.
You've got people like me who, I need downtime. I can do something intense and then I need some time with nothing in it, and we have these different energy levels. But if you look into your human design, which is your energetic blueprint, it's sort of the energetic blueprint of your potential, is we actually have these different motors in our design. There's 4 of them. And so within these motors, the energy has a different kind of flavor. It operates in a different way. And so you can actually set your life, your business up to work with those sorts of energies. So for example, we have the sacral energy, which if you're a generator or a manifesting generator, you will have that energy. That's that continuous creative energy. So, as long as you're doing work that lights you up, you wake up in the morning, it's switched on, off you go all day, you use it up, you go to sleep, you wake up again. Brilliant. But if you're a non-energy type, like you're a projector, a manifestor, reflector, I'm a projector, we don't have that energy. I don't have that constant source of energy. But for me, for example, I have a defined root. So a root is this pulsing energy. So when it switches on, I'll describe it and you'll know if you have it. It's that kind of energy that a client messages at 5 p.m. and they're like, I know this is last minute, but could you do something for me by, I don't know, lunchtime the next day? And it's the root that kicks in. It's that get shit done energy. It's you can make it happen. That's a different type of energy. Then there is, the emotional energy that comes in waves. And anyone with an emotional authority, which I have, when I'm on the top of the wave, I am Wonder Woman. You would look at me and you'd be like, that's the most productive woman on the planet. She's a powerhouse. And then when I'm on the bottom of the wave, it's I got nothing. I just need to go, curl up in a corner. And, different energy through the different wave. So energetic sustainability is about recognizing that we do not have the same energy. And just because we've all been told to work the same, set our businesses up the same, set our lives up the same, we have to put that aside. We have to put the judgment aside. So just because a mum over here is doing it this way and doesn't appear to be tired, doesn't mean that's how you should be a mum or how you should run your business. You get to choose, and actually recognizing what works for you. As a projector, I'm not meant to work more than 20 hours a week. So I don't run my business in the way that, say, a generator or a manifesting generator would. And, every now and again over the years, I've worked with someone who's further ahead than me, and their advice has been to do more. And, I go up that path and I go, well, they know more than me because they're ahead of me, so I'm going to do more. And then it doesn't work for my energy system. And I have to go, this isn't how you operate. And yet when I build rest into my business, I make more money because my energy system is different. So it's about actually understanding your energy. So if you're listening to this, you can get your chart on my website for free. If you actually go to michelleboyde.com/start, you'll find all sorts of things there, including the chart. And Boyd has an E on the end, just because not everyone's Boyd does. So I just mentioned that. But you can get your chart and you can start to look into that stuff. Because if you don't set yourself up energetically sustainably, what happens is you can do it for 12, 18 months and then you fall off that cliff again. And if you are, in that space at the moment where you feel like everything is too much, this might be one of the reasons. It's not because you're not doing it well enough. It's just, it doesn't fit with the way that you were actually designed to run your energy.
Yeah, it's so liberating just hearing that, because I'm a manifesting generator, so I can go. Yes, like I can go, but then I would find myself like when I first started, like reading all the things of like wake up at 5 a.m., go, and like I felt like I was burning out. And when I realized like, oh, that works for other people. I don't have to like just blindly follow what other people are doing. I have to find what's right for me and filter through my own system. And then I started incorporating those downtimes for myself, because I can go, but I absolutely need that downtime too. And recognizing just like to be quiet, and it's okay to do that and give myself permission. So it was so liberating to be like, okay, there's other ways to be successful than to just like grind, because that's how I felt for most of my life. I just had to go. So
yeah.
I love
and
that.
I mean, you're also not supposed to follow someone else's process. Like nothing is worse than you saying, here's a 6-step process or a 10-step process, because you're like, okay, I'm going to do 1 and 2 and I'm going to skip over 3 and 4 and jump to 5. And like, so again, that doesn't utilize your energy well for you to do that. So it's, this is the thing, is that I believe we're moving into a stage where it's so much more about individualization and really creating and curating everything to the way that you want to move through the world. And there is so much wonderful expertise and there's so many wonderful people out there, but like the discernment to know the bits to take and the bits to say thank you, but no thank you, that's not right for me, it's like one of the most powerful things.
Oh, you're 100% right. And being able to know yourself well enough to know what feels aligned, what feels like truth for you versus the ones not to. It's so incredibly powerful. And in the beginning, I definitely was not doing that. So it's like you do get stuck in those cycles of like, I have to do all this. Like, so yeah, it's so incredibly powerful to realize that like you are your own person and to understand yourself. And I'm so grateful for your explanation, because it's those examples really just help you realize like, okay, like it's going to ebb and flow. You don't have to be on 100% all the time. And especially if you're someone who has a different way of approaching it, it really can't be on, and you can be successful even with downtime in your life. So it's really amazing to hear.
And the other part as well is actually where your energy is sitting. And this is, something I do a lot with clients, because what happens a lot, and this especially with, people who are high performers, achievers, successful people who are striving, is that because they are, and I'm exaggerating it as I come forward here, but as they're always pushing towards the next thing, their energy actually falls forward of their body and it falls slightly out of their body. And so they actually become slightly disembodied with their energy. And so you see this an awful lot with women, with successful women. And you'll see this when, you're seeking a relationship and you feel like you're kind of almost, you're trying to have the relationship, but you can't get the relationship, or, you're really doing everything possible to get the goal that you want, but you can't seem to get there. And it can show up in places that don't feel so big and significant. So I had one client and she had these builders on her property for ages. And then they stopped doing the work. And for weeks and weeks, she was messaging them, she was phoning them, and they were just ignoring all of her communication. And when we went into her body and we went into her energy system, I could see that her energy was doing exactly this. It was flung forward. We're sort of like pushing them away a little bit. And so we literally moved her energy completely back in her body, and we shifted the energetic center of gravity in her body so that it was much deeper down. So immediately, you feel yourself go back and settle, and it creates that space. Literally the next day they appeared and they finished the work.
Oh my gosh.
This is also one of the things we can, it's like, how do we use our energy? But it's also like, where is our energy? Because, part of it is pulling our energy back in from all of the people, the places, the obligations, but actually even physically, where is it sitting? Like, is it out here? And pulling it back in.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's so fascinating. Like energy is like one of those newer things that like I didn't even realize how powerful that is. I mean, everything is energy, but like in the beginning, I realized how much I was projecting energy out onto others. Like, and I was not allowing any in my system. So when you say that, it's like, it hits home. I've experienced that in my life, and it's so powerful, the work you do and how you can really help people make these tremendous shifts so quickly and really embrace their own inner truth and alignment. And for someone who wants to connect with you, how can they find you?
So best place is if you go to my website, Michelle Boyde with an E on the end.com/start, and you will find the Liminal Archetype quiz there. You will find your human design chart, all of that information. And then if you want to connect and work with me one-on-one, then you'll see the invitation there in that space. So that's the best way.
Amazing. I'll put everything in the show notes. So definitely connect with Michelle. And thank you again for everything you shared today. There's so many eye-opening things. I think it's an episode you can listen to a few times and get more out of it. So thank you again for everything.
Thank you. It's been lovely being on. I could sit and talk to you for ages.
Same. I know. Absolutely. And for anyone who's listening, if you found value in this, share it with someone who could also benefit from this. It's only in these messages that we can really help each other expand and move to that next version of ourselves. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending this time with me today. If something in this episode stirred your truth, reminded you of your worth, or helped you see your patterns with more compassion, you're already rewiring your life. Remember, you don't have to earn your place, overgive to be valued, or shrink to keep the peace. You get to honor your voice, you get to protect your energy, you get to live aligned with who you really are. If you're ready to go deeper, explore more tools, or join a community of women walking this same path, head over to drkellykessler.com. Everything you need to continue this journey is waiting for you. Until next time, take a deep breath, trust yourself, and keep choosing the version of you who feels like home.